Because Kate had been moaning that you'd been gone a long time watching the football.
I'm almost certain that when I came out, I came over and he was here.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, it looks like it's coming down to the wire. It looks like the Madeleine McCann case will be solved before the end of the year, certainly if we go by an article that has just been published in The Sun, which seems to indicate that that is the position of the European Court of Human Rights. Now, those in the know that the European Court of Human Rights has been sitting on the Madeleine McCann case docket. It's up to them to make a final pronouncement on the guilt or innocence of the detective investigating them. In other words, we'll finally have legal closure and additional certainty from Europe's highest court on whether the detective investigating the McCanns was right or wrong. So probably a more accurate title would be something along the lines of McCann case will be resolved, certainly legally resolved, in 2021. Incredibly, while the case has been in legal limbo at the European Court of Human Rights for the past 3 years or so, the McCanns have now apparently indicated their willingness to settle the case. Guess what? Portugal are sticking to their guns, and good for them for doing so. I'll put a link in the description so you can read the article, but the opposite part is the fact that, you sort of have the McCanns going after Amaral right in the beginning. They sue him, they win, they lose the appeal, they lose another appeal at a higher court, and then it gets escalated to the European Court of Human Rights, and now it looks like they are willing to settle, but Portugal aren't. Thus far, the McCanns have, as I say, won once and lost twice during hearings testing their case against the detective. Briefly, what the European Court of Human Rights will be ruling on is whether the detective's claims that Madeleine's parents were responsible for Madeleine's disappearance, and I guess by implication, possibly, perhaps indirectly, her death, are legally defensible. In other words, did the detective have a point? Was he justified in what he said or wrote? Or will the court find in the McCann's favor, basically deciding on their innocence? Will they find the Portuguese detective guilty of defamation, or will they exonerate him? And apparently we're going to find the answer to this before the end of 2021. And given Portugal's stance, it seems they feel pretty confident about the outcome. Also, if the McCanns lose, one wonders how the legal status of Madeleine might change. She's currently regarded legally as still alive, certainly from her parents' position, despite no evidence. As well as I think it's a sentiment in the UK, and that certainly in the UK media seems to echo the McCann's position. But one wonders, if the McCanns lose, will sentiment change? Will it change in the UK? Will it change in wider Europe? I've visited Portugal in 2019 and spoke to a few people, taxi drivers and whatnot, and all of them seem to be fairly confident or fairly sure that Madeleine wasn't abducted, that their story, didn't make sense to them. I'm talking about locals. Ordinary locals didn't have the same position, I think, as what is happening in Britain. So it'll be interesting if public funds will continue to be sought by the couple in order to quote unquote search for Madeleine, meaning subsequent to the verdict, and also B, whether British authorities and British media will continue pandering to this particular case the way they have been for the past decade or more. Now, I think what's interesting is there was an article in The Sun about a month ago on March 27th about another article about the European Court of Human Rights situation. This is a quote. The headline was, "Kate and Jerry told to reach friendly settlement with disgraced ex-detective due to court backlog." And what will be interesting again is if the European Court of Human Rights find in the quote-unquote disgrace detectives favour, then where does the disgrace then shift? Or does it become a case that, oh, the European Court of Human Rights is fake news, the European Court of Human Rights is biased, the European Court of Human Rights is whatever, and this couple are beyond suspicion, I guess. On the other hand, they may find in Kate and Jerry's favour, and then I think the Portuguese government are then liable, not so much the detective. I say that under correction. Anyway, within the article, it refers to, this is the article of The Sun, March 27th, it refers to a friend or close source saying that it was an extraordinary request to, ask for the settlement. And then it makes this sort of, to me, a bit of a strange claim that if Gonzalo Amaral continues to make outrageous claims, he will find he has a fight on his hands. That's something I think they said a long time ago, way back in the court narrative. So to bring it up now, that these are outrageous claims when he's actually won the two latest appeals, it's not outrageous at all. Kate and Jerry, and then it says Kate and Jerry are not going to let him get away with what he said about them. Well, and vice versa. The Sun article that came out recently, 2 months later, had no reference to that fighting talk in the March article. And this was something brought up by someone called Julie in just response to some of the commentary that I made. She said that, this whole thing about offering to settle out of court. So I think in the McCann case, there's a lot of massive PR and media, which it feels like it's actually used to bully, or if not bully, certainly drowns out everything else. Because it's like these loud trumpeting sounds, which ultimately obscures, what really happened here. What is some of the evidence? Not what are the feelings and what do we hope is going on and, all of that kind of thing. So personally, I wonder whether the European Court of Human Rights is going to find in Amaral's favour. And if they do, is that going to lead to other lawsuits that happened previously being reversed, or what is going to happen? I wonder. So while I'm talking about the McCanns, I think something else that's quite interesting is an article came out just a few days ago on May the 27th roundabout, and it talks about Madeleine McCann's parents still paying to fight a Portuguese detective. And, I just found it pretty incredible that there's this article sympathizing with them, and, it's sort of saying, wow, they've got to pay £4,229. And, it's such a lot of money to pay in terms of fighting this Portuguese detective when it was their choice. It was their choice to go after him. Oh, but now they've got to pay legal costs of £4,000. Ooh, boo-hoo-hoo. And then, meanwhile, the investigation has cost over £12 million. And there's over £773,000 in a fund. And a lot of the money that they get in this Find Madeleine fund is public donations, right? £773,000 in the fund right now, but boo-hoo-hoo, we've got to pay £4,000 to pay for our legal fight against somebody else. And I've got to say, for my part, I really do hope that this case is resolved this year, because one wonders if it's not, how long is this going to go on? When I was in Praia da Luz in 2019, I actually saw personally, firsthand, directly, on the streets, stop signs with the word, it's like I said, stop, the classic road sign, and then McCann Circus or McCann on the stop sign. So the people there are actually fed up with what is going on. And I think some of that fed upness is featuring every now and then in social media. You certainly see it on, in Britain every now and then with sort of satirical and parodying of this whole situation. But what will be really important is if it is resolved this year in a legal manner, if the European Court of Human Rights rules and the ruling is clear and public. And I've got to say, for a while I was wondering whether they hadn't ruled already, and because it wasn't what certain people thought it would be or wanted it to be, they were very quiet about it. Just because of the length of time it was there. Now it appears that they haven't ruled yet, and hopefully once the ruling comes out, we'll hear about it. It won't be something like, for reasons to protect an investigation, or for reasons of, the parties have settled, so they're not going to disclose what actually happened or whatever. It would be good to get a public announcement basically providing certainty on this case that has been dragging along for a really long time. A case that really should have had a trial, just like the John Benet Ramsey case, and should have had a result. Instead, what you've had is PR, PR, PR. And so I believe that the documentary, I think it cost £20 million. I'd love to know who was responsible for paying for that. A £20 million Netflix documentary came out, The Disappearance of Madeleine McCann, interestingly, while the whole case is being heard at the European Court of Human Rights. And obviously that whole narrative is a big cheerleading song for the McCanns. It sort of supports the whole abductor narrative. It pretends sort of to be this unbiased look, but it basically just says everything the McCanns have been saying all along, what their PR people have been saying all along. And I was actually looking at an article talking about the McCanns going in for questioning on the night that they were kind of made official suspects. And what's so interesting is you have Jerry's sister, I think Philomena, saying these charges are ludicrous. Then you have the PR spokesman going on camera saying these charges are ludicrous. And then I think Jerry McCann himself blogged saying the same thing, using the same word. These allegations against us are ludicrous. And so against the background of an investigation where in Portugal, it's kind of the law that the authorities may not talk about cases that are ongoing. And technically, the people at the center of them may not either. But you have a little loophole where their family members can say something, and you can, I guess, write something on a blog, I guess, and you can have a PR spokesman speaking on your behalf. And then it amounts to kind of a PR bullhorn drowning everything out, and then the police quietly trying to go on with what they were doing. And yeah, we are how many years later? Isn't it something like 14 years after the fact? And what we want is to hear the other side of the story, not the PR. What the evidence tested in court leads the highest court in Europe to, what assessment they come to. In any event, if you're interested in the debunk that I did on YouTube, there are something like 9 or 10 episodes. You can go to the playlists and just check them out. I just went through the Netflix documentary episode by episode, blogged about it, but also just really studied what was there, the footage, some of the interesting archival footage, and just examined the whole strategy behind the Netflix series, the documentary. So you're welcome to go and look at that playlist on the Madeleine McCann case. So I'll actually put a link to that playlist in the description as well. I've also written 3 books on the case, the Doubt series, Doubt 2 and Doubt 3, which did quite well when they came out. And then I've also followed that up with Deep into Darkness and Deeper into Darkness. Deeper into Darkness was based on my trip to Praia da Luz, looking at things like shutters, looking at the lay of the land, testing the length of time it would take to get from apartment 5A to the nearest section of coast, and also sorts of other things as well. I'm interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think it'll be solved this year? And also, do you think it'll be the legal aspect? Do you think it will be in the detective's favor, or do you think it'll be in the McCann's favor? What's your opinion of that? Thank you for listening. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys next time.